Welcome to the HLCP Foresight Network series of Futures Masterclasses. We would like to thank you, first of all, for supporting this joint initiative aiming at Futures and Foresight capacity building, peer learning, and knowledge transfer. In times of high volatility, uncertainty, and complexity, it is critical to develop futures-related capabilities such as futures literacy and effectively integrate foresight methods and tools in our policy design and programming to support transformation and innovation efforts. UNESCO, as coordinator of the HLCP Foresight Network, initiated this Futures Capacity Building Initiative and joined forces with UN Global Pulse, UNEP, ILO, UNDPPA, UN Habitat, and external experts from the academia and the private sector to design and prototype this series of Futures Masterclasses. The sessions will cover many interesting aspects, including horizon scanning, scenarios, participatory futures, speculative futures, futures literacy laboratories, and foresight for systems change. It is hoped that the skills and knowledge learned through this process can make contributions to HLCP's strategic orientation in support of the 2030 Agenda and the Common Agenda in general. Today, we are opening the series of Futures Masterclasses with a horizon scanning session. We have the pleasure to introduce to you now Dr. George Profitiliotis from the Foundation for Research and Technology Hellas, the Praxi Network, a long-standing collaborator with UNESCO. Some words about George. George is an anticipation and foresight specialist. He is an electrical and computer engineer by academic training. He holds a PhD from the National Technical University of Athens, and he is a postdoctoral researcher within the Department of Humanities, Social Science, and Law in the same university, studying the pertinence of anticipation to the search for life in space. George is a member of various interdisciplinary scientific working groups, such as the Panel of Social Sciences and Humanities of the Committee of Space Research. He has years of experience in conducting horizon scanning, designing and implementing futures and foresight work. Welcome, George. What a pleasure to be here with all of you and with you, George. Many thanks for collaborating with UNESCO's Futures Literacy team, Iriana, Kushal, and Sally, connected here today, and in designing today's masterclass. We're looking forward to learning about horizon scanning. I pass over, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's an honor to be able to contribute to this important endeavor that you are organizing. It's a very crucial moment in time now that you have put together this comprehensive program of masterclasses. I would also like to thank the team for assisting in all this co-design process. It was really a lot of effort, and I would like to thank everyone who contributed to this. Thank you so much once again for the invitation. Today we will be discussing the topic of horizon environmental scanning, and I am starting with this topic, and I will try to give you also some basic insights on the cognitive aspects, let's say, of futures related activities. I have been conducting scanning activities for the past years, and most of this experience has been captured in these slides. I have also included academic references there for you, so that you can go back and read the slides. Feel free to do so. In the future, you will receive them. You don't have to write anything down. And also, at any point that you might have a question, you can feel free to ask in the chat, or we will interrupt at some point the flow of the presentation to ask, open the floor for potential questions. Let's first start with some basic, let's say, concepts that I will be using throughout this presentation. I have to use a disclaimer here. I'm not claiming that these are comprehensive definitions. These are just some ways that I am defining the terms that I will be using as I talk through the presentation. So during the master classes that have been like so intricately put together in this program. You will learn a lot about futures. You will cover a lot of aspects of future studies. You will have many experts who have worked many years in the practice of these techniques, but also in theory. And you will get a better understanding after this whole program is finished. So I would also like to urge you to follow up with attending the other masterclasses as well. But for this specific presentation, let's say that when I am using the word foresight, I will be referring to this human ability of thinking about the future, which is also called in cognitive science, in psychology, it's also called prospective cognition and future thinking. And I will be using the word anticipation to indicate a forward-looking attitude, and the use of this attitude result for action in the present, which is actually thinking about the future, but also using this thought for doing something in the present. So these are cognitive activities, let's say, cognitive abilities on the left side of the slide. And on the right side of the slide, I will be using some terms like strategic foresight, which is the concept that I'm using for this is a systematic exploration of multiple futures, plausible future developments to inform present decisions, and futures literacy as a capability to use the future for different reasons in a variety of ways. So you may see already that on the left side, you have cognitive abilities, and on the right side, you have some sort of metacognitive processes, strategies that are actively influencing the way you are using foresight as an inherent capacity and also anticipation. So let's first start with the issue of horizon environmental scanning, which was the title of this masterclass. It seems that these two terms, horizon scanning and environmental scanning, might be the two sides of the same coin. Environmental scanning is the systematic identification, monitoring, and examination of issues of relevance to the top concern that is usually used by organizations in short-term horizons to gain intelligence on the organizational environment that they operate in. Horizon scanning seems to be a subset of environmental scanning that specifically stresses phenomena that have novel features. It might also have a longer time horizon than environmental scanning, which might be more shorter term, and it aims to inform decisions more widely, thematically or in a broader sense, while environmental scanning intends to inform immediate and short-term decision making. That's why it is very closely relating to intelligence. So horizon scanning is a subset, a complementary activity to environmental scanning. And why do organizations use environmental scanning and intelligence gathering, and also horizon scanning as well, which is more longer term and tries to sense novelty? This is because these organizations need to operate in this VUCA world. You may have already heard this acronym before. This world of volatility, which means that change itself is unstable, but also at the same time complexity, where we have many systems, technological, social, political, economic systems that are interconnected intricately in a way that there are many feedback loops that give rise to complexity. And at the same time, we have systems whose behavior is uncertain. We know the values, we know the variables in some cases, but we don't know their values. We don't know which states they will get. But at the same time, we have some cases where parts of these complex systems are totally ambiguous, where we don't have any knowledge on the variables themselves. It's not just uncertainty, it's ambiguity. So in this very crazy world, let's say, organizations try to somehow gain information, which is the currency of how organizations work. And in order to do so, they need to build their capacity to gain access to knowledge. And there are some issues with that, because a lot of this knowledge is not known to the organization. We have this case that you may have already heard in the past, where we have known knowns, unknown knowns, unknown unknowns, and known unknowns, which cover all these aspects of knowledge, where there are some aspects of reality that the organization knows and the world knows as well. These are known knowns. there are aspects of reality, of the operational environment, let's say, that the organization knows, but the world does not know. These are hidden information that the organization has, and it keeps it for itself. And there might be some stuff that the other world knows, but the organization does not. These are things that the organization is blind to. And there are some real surprises, really unknown unknowns that are not known to either to the organization or to the rest of the world. And in order to be able to navigate this environment of a lot of unknowns, organizations try to use this process of scanning, looking for signs, looking for signals, which are indicators of small or local phenomena that have the potential to grow in scale and reach. And during this systematic process of exploring and identifying signals, organizations try to construct phenomena. They're trying to understand phenomena that are occurring in the world by spotting their signals and trying afterwards to synthesize the so-called emerging issues, the broader phenomena, let's say, that might give rise to these spatial occasions, these events, these phenomena that might be appearing in the present. So we have this process that might be a little bit better explained using the tree metaphor, where we have the organizations trying to figure out the bark of this tree, which is an emerging issue, a broader phenomenon, let's say. But to do so, the organization is looking for signals using horizon scanning, using scanning, which are the leaves. And through the signals, organizations try to construct the branches of the tree, which are the phenomena. And if they make sense of this in a constructive way, it might even be able to start thinking about drivers, which is another word that you might have heard in the past. Drivers are major factors that are known or believed to be shaping or influencing our topic of concern, or might be thought to be liable to do so in the future. But this is a simplified concept because drivers are essentially interconnected in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. There is not a single driver driving broader phenomena or like more singular phenomena or generating signals by itself. All these drivers are interconnected, and at the same time, the signals, the phenomena that are producing these signals, and the emerging issues, the broader phenomena that give rise to the smaller phenomena are all interconnected among themselves. So it's a very complicated picture where you are trying to see the forest for the trees. But essentially, as I said before, the only thing that you can actually spot are the leaves. You can only see the leaves of the tree. And when you try to make sense of these leaves and you construct the bark of the tree, you may have reached to the point where you have identified or constructed, to say it better, an emerging issue, a broader phenomenon, but you still do not know what kind of phenomenon this is. So you may have heard in the past people using the terms weak signals, uncertainties, or even better, trends. These are third level explanations of how signals are being constructed into, let's say, concepts that make sense to us. So when you have looked into the leaves of a tree and you have constructed the bark and you have this emerging issue, you can, let's say, split these issues of these broader phenomena that are happening in the world into three broad categories: the faint, the vague, and the bright indicators of broader phenomena. The bright indicators, these are perceived trajectories of very important phenomena that are moving in a clearly identifiable general direction. These are trends. These show that a phenomenon is taking a specific direction, and it is an important phenomenon. But at the same time, we might have a little bit more faint issues that might be indicating a rudimentary force of change, whose important and general direction is still not clearly identifiable. So we cannot say for sure if this emerging issue, the bark of the tree that we have identified, is important or not, and which direction is going. But then we have another category where we have an established force of change, an important phenomenon, but whose general direction is not clearly identifiable. We know it is important, it's not faint, it's just vague, it's vague. We have an important phenomenon, but we don't know towards which direction it will go. So we have three kinds of broader phenomena that are appearing in the world, which we are trying to hunt down using a signal scanning process by sensing for the leaves of the trees to construct the barks. And this is also the point where you see a lot of trends, a lot of very bright indicators of broader phenomena converging towards a specific direction, where you have some sort of, let's say, blazing indicators. These are very long-term trajectories of a host of converging phenomena of global scale and broad reach, which are moving in a clearly identifiable general direction. So these are megatrends. You may have heard this term in the past, and there are 4 examples here for your, just to make sense of this concept more easily, because it's a lot of concepts, and no, you can go back and read stuff afterwards. But one of these megatrends is growing consumption. There are many trends converging towards this megatrend, and also the changing nature of work. This is comprised of smaller trends, which are giving rise to this tidal wave, let's say, but is also reinforcing the other trends and might also be generating new weak signals, perhaps in sometimes uncertainties. So now this begs the question, how is scanning conducted? There are 2 flavors of scanning which are working together. We have exploratory scanning, where we are using a wide variety of data from different sources to try to assemble the bark of the tree, the broader phenomena, the emerging issues. And we use this approach to build these emerging issues bottom up, to generate hypotheses that there are these sort of phenomena out there in the world. But then after we generate these potential emerging issues, we go to the next part of this, to the next, let's say the second side of this coin, where we have issue-centered scanning, which evaluates these hypotheses. And it uses these general directions that we have identified by looking into, let's say, various data sources, and tries to evaluate whether there is truly a broad phenomenon there, or perhaps this is just something that will pass, and it's something that is not significant. So issue-centered scanning is this part, which is top-down, and it evaluates hypotheses that we may have made regarding the presence of phenomena out there in the world, of emerging issues, let's say, of heralds of the future as it emerges into the present. How do you do this in practice? We said that we need to start with looking for the signs, right? We need to search for the signals. We need to build an understanding of the leaves of the tree to be able to understand the emerging issue, the phenomenon, the broader phenomenon of like that essentially belongs to the future, but seems to be emerging in the present and changing the nature of the world, at least at a specific point. So the first thing that you will need to do is to create an action plan, a scoping and an action plan. You need to know how far into the future you're looking into and which area is of interest to you. Is this like a specific location? Is this a nation? Is this a specific sector, like I'm not sure, agriculture? Is this a country? Is this like is the time horizon 2050? Is it 2035? This is important to know because it frames the way that you are searching for signals, which is the next part. And during the search for signals, you either search in an exploratory fashion by looking through a lot of data, different data sources to construct your hypothesis that these phenomena that signify the future are out there in the world. But at the same time, you are evaluating these hypotheses with issue-centered scanning. As you create them, you try to find out whether you can find other signals that are supporting this evidence. So this is the case where you are evaluating and selecting the signal. And when you have identified a lot of these leaves of the tree, you can start creating clusters. So you can imagine with the tree metaphor that a branch, which is a phenomenon, something that appears, an event that appears in the present, that might be heralding the arrival of the future, a branch produces a lot of leaves. So by clustering a lot of signals, which are the leaves of the tree in this metaphor, you might be able to infer the presence of the branch. So by clustering the signals, you can try to create phenomena which are like inside your mind, in order to be able then to create clusters of these phenomena. And to do this, you have to go into a loop where you search for signals, you evaluate what you find and select those signals that seem to be important, that seem to be signifying some sort of phenomenon. You cluster these signals that might be indicating like some phenomena in a lower level. And then through these clusters, you're trying to make sense, to construct meaning for a specific emerging issue, a specific phenomenon that is a broader phenomenon that is making itself apparent in the present, but might be indicating for the future. And to do so, you have to go through this process again and again. When you create these clusters of signals, when you put a lot of signals together to make sense of them, you need to go into the search phase again, because now you have formulated hypotheses that there are phenomena out there, and you are trying to build your better understanding, to construct a better understanding of these phenomena that might be out there in the world, either smaller phenomena or broader. Because broader phenomena are what we are looking for, right? You're looking for phenomena that are at the base, the bark of the tree. To do so, you're going through this phenomena verification and cluster refinement loop. And when you have reached this process where you are fine with what you have found some clusters of signals out there in the world that might be indicating the presence of new happenings, new events, new occurrences in the present that might be indicating towards something that is emerging from the future, let's say. Then you can start interpreting these clusters, because these clusters are essentially clusters of signals, right? You are still looking into the leaves of the tree. You have to interpret these clusters of signals to elicit the issues that are beneath them. And when you do so, you can finally have a list. You have a list of clusters of signals that are signifying this emerging issue. So I get it's a little bit complicated, but we will try to disambiguate a little bit in the hands-on exercise. So after you have created these clusters that signify emerging issues, how do you make sense of whether these are trends or weak signals or uncertainties? Because these are the words of the trade, right? These are the words that most people use when we are discussing about the future. We may have heard them already in the past. And you may also want to feed them into a scenario planning activity or into a futures literacy workshop. It's not enough to just say that we have a list of clusters that might be signifying towards an emerging issue, something that is appearing in the present but might be indicating that a larger happening in the future. To do so, you have to go through the impact certainty classification, where with your team you try to make sense of these clusters that you have identified in a sense that assesses both their certainty. How certain is your team, or how certain are you that this emerging issue that you have inferred from the clusters will consolidate, taking into consideration the time horizon that you have set in the very first phase of this exercise, of this process. So how certain would you be that this specific cluster of emerging issue will take place by 2035 or by 2040? And at the same time, you are trying to assess the impact, the importance of this emerging issue, if it happens, in your specific area of interest. As I said before, on a country level, let's say on a regional level, on a sectoral level in agriculture. And when you do this and you assess every single cluster of emerging issues from your list against these two parameters, in a qualitative sense, low, medium, high, in both cases, you can have this sort of rudimentary qualitative mapping where you know, as you can see with the color codes, what kind of emerging issues could be assigned the title, let's say, of a trend, and which of them could be like made sense of in terms of a weak signal, that these are not you're not very sure that they will occur. You're not also very sure about what kind of impact they will have, or perhaps they might be uncertainties. These are cases of emerging issues that can have a very high impact, but at the same time, you are very uncertain that they will occur. So when you have this sort of an extra level of classification of these emerging issues that you have created, then you can feed these forward into a scenario planning activity. And a specific case of game-changing uncertainties, like very low certainty and high impact events, is the wildcard events. This case, you may have already heard in the past about black swans. Actually, if you remember what I discussed before regarding known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, using the same technique, we can approach various wildcard events, which are game-changing uncertainties, with respect to the kind of knowledge that we have on the organizational level, and with respect to the kind of knowledge that there is about this kind of events out there in the world. Not every kind of game-changing uncertainty, like very uncertain event, but very high impact events, are black swans. Black swans are events that are truly unknown. They are known both to our organization, but also known to the world. They are non-perceptible even by experts. They appear out of the blue. But this is not the only case. We have also the case of the black jellyfish, which are stuff that we think we know and understand, but essentially turn out to be more complex and uncertain. We don't know about them. The others out there in the world might know about them, and we might believe we know about them, but we do not. And we also have the case of the black elephant. It says the elephant in the room, something that everyone can acknowledge, every organization can acknowledge. This is an important, it is there, it is there. But no one chooses to really make sense of this. Instead, they choose to ignore it. So even if it is known to oneself or on an organizational level, it is not known to the world let's say, in the sense that there is a consensus that this issue is truly a wildcard event. So it's not just black swans. There are other cases of wildcard events, game-changing uncertainties. But these uncertainties, not all of them happen out of the blue. Just the black swans happen out of the blue. Some of these cases, for the black jellyfish, let's say, or for the black elephant, we can gain some sort of knowledge, anticipatory knowledge, through looking for weak signals. We can, through our scanning processes, we might be able to anticipate a wildcard event before it occurs if we scan a lot and collect a lot of weak signals that might be building our level of knowledge to the point where we start to make sense of an emerging issue as an important wildcard event that might occur in the future. When we build our level of knowledge through weak signals, we can make sense of this wildcard event before it happens, and we might have some time to react. And now this is the final slide of this part, and I'm trying to make the case here for looking for signals as an organizational activity. Humans are inherently boundedly rational. This means that the capacity of the human mind on an individual level for formulating complex problems is very small compared with the size of the problems whose solution is required for like objectively rational behavior in the real world. Because we have limited mental skills, we have habits, we have reflexes, we have limited extent of knowledge, as you can recall with the previous diagrams. We can process information in a very limited way. We're not efficient in information processes. And this bounds and limits the way that we can make sense of the world and decide based on the information that we have collected. We are operating in a world of incomplete information. How can an organization make up for this? I make the case here for sense making. So on an organizational level, for an organization to be rational, despite the limited rationality, let's say the bounded rationality of its people, sense making can come to the rescue. So sense making, in the sense making view, organizational actors have first to make sense of what is happening. It is not that they objectively, rationally gain knowledge about the world and then they make rational decisions. It is that actors who are boundedly rational try to construct meaning in the organizational environment to develop a shared interpretation. So among actors inside your team of scanners that are scanning for signals of the future, there is not an objective truth. It is just a shared interpretation. As you can recall from the previous slides, there is a lot of meaning making. We are constructing meaning out of looking into signals, constructing meaning about phenomena, constructing meaning about the emerging issues that give rise to this phenomena. And this is not bad, right? This is the way that an organization can make up for this inherent issue that humans have, that their rationality is bounded. And that is why, in a sense-making view, people are not being seen as rational processors of information, but they are seen as actors that are trying to impose their meaning upon what is happening, and then use this meaning that has been constructed in an intersubjective, let's say, way, in a shared interpretation manner, to understand what is going on in the environment, to be on the same page, let's say, and to act. So this is the end of the theory presentation, let's say. If there are any questions before we go to the hands-on exercise, where we will make sense of these terms in a practical way, I can respond now, or if there's anything on the chat, if there's anything you would like to ask or any clarification, please feel free. So should we then go to the hands-on exercise? If there's no question. I can hear you.
We have the first question in the chat. I don't know if you can see it at the same time.
Yeah, now I opened the chat now, yes.
Signals.
Yes.
Ben Riem Schneider, if you want to,
please feel free.
Connect your audio also, maybe.
I can try if you can
hear me well. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. I apologize in advance if I'm not sticking entirely to the terminology, but it really helps to sort of have a framework that you presented initially. I'm coming from a background where we would rather talk about an indicator behaving in a certain way. And I think a lot of what was presented today is around sort of these significant changes in the behavior of an indicator, whether it is a black swan or whether it is some other kind of drastic change. How would you put into your theory sort of the trends that one see, right? Because that, I suppose, from a predictive perspective also plays a rather big role. Thank you.
Yes. So what do you mean quantitative indicators? If we have quantitative indicators regarding a specific phenomenon that we're tracking? Yeah. So then that would be a case where you should use the terminology of trend in terms of forecasting. These terms that I'm using here are not directly transferable, because we have the term trend in forecasting as well. That is in quantitative forecasting. I'm not using the same concept. It's not directly. It might be the same word, but it's not the same concept. So if, let's say, that the indicator itself does not really mean anything on a qualitative sense to your sensing scanning team, unless you make meaning out of it. So in order for you to be able to explain, let's say, to construct meaning out of this behavior of an indicator, even if it is a quantitative indicator, you need to get your team members together to make sense of this in a broader way, let's say in a qualitative sense, not in a quantitative manner. And to do so, you will have to try to build more knowledge about that. It's not just about a single indicator, but this indicator might be describing a part of a phenomenon, and essentially a change in the behavior of an indicator might actually be a signal. So it might not be an overarching, let's say, it might not be the bark of the tree, but it might be something like a leaf. This gets down to your team of scanning practitioners that have to construct meaning to interpret what this means. It's not we will not use the mathematical terminology of a trend in a forecasting sense here. I'm not sure if it answers your question. If not, I can clarify further.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I can see the chat. I lost the chat. If there are other questions while I'm trying to find.
So I do not see other questions. So maybe we can start a hands-on experience and activity,
Yes.
and I'm sure there will be more questions coming up.
Rihanna has shared the link for a board in the chat. Try to click on this and you will get to this collaborative whiteboard that we created together with Rihanna, Sally, and Sal. We have built a hands-on exercise for you to practice, let's say, a little bit these qualitative terms that we discussed before. And hopefully after that, you may have more questions or more specific questions, or perhaps even no questions. You may have understood what we discussed before. On the left part of the whiteboard, as you can see in Sally's screen sharing view, you will see that there is a small collection of articles. It has this header, articles to read. We will start with this part now in plenary. Try to read these articles. You have 8 minutes for all of them, for the 5 articles. Try to read, to skim, let's say, these articles. Try to read the titles and then read the most important information and read through them in a way that that gives you the most important parts of the article, because you only have 8 minutes to do so. And as you are reading through these articles, keep in mind that you are actually emulating the process that you would be going through if you were scanning for signals. So if you were scanning for signals, when I was discussing, like in the very first stages of the presentation, where we were looking into a vast, like, source of information, most of this information is textual, is in the forms of news articles or other kind of textual information. And this is a very important part of the scanning work that one would need to do. So we are trying to simulate this here. You will need to read through these articles now for the next 8 minutes and try to read them as a scanner. Try to identify through these articles that you're reading patterns that you might see, some sort of connections among some of these articles that might be indicating towards something that seems to appear in the present, something new that is happening, something that is a new, let's say, signal, a new happening that is being indicated through these articles. So try to read them, and then we will discuss further. The first part of your scanning experience is done. Now you had only 8 minutes to look into 5 articles. Yeah, this is a constrained environment, like it would be in the real world, where you would have to look through a lot of stuff in very little time to be able to start making sense of this. Hopefully, you may have already identified some sort of patterns between articles or among more than 2 articles, who knows? And this is now the basis for what we're going to do in the next part of this activity, where you will be split into groups, small groups, and you will have the opportunity to discuss among yourselves how these articles might essentially be indicating towards the same thing, let's say. So which of these articles might essentially be part of the same signal? As you are thinking about this now, try to remember what you read, the most important parts of the most important information out of the articles that you read. You have here the titles of the news articles. And what we want you to do is, during this activity, this group activity in your small groups, try to drag the titles, the sticky notes with the titles of these articles, and bring them to these white boxes where you can, or next to them if they're hiding for some reason. But try to cluster the news titles of the headlines of these news articles together in a way that you decide, construct some sort of meaning for a signal that you may have identified during this scanning process that we did. And when you do this, try to give a short name to this signal by writing down in this light blue boxes, as Rihanna indicates here, a small, let's say 5 or 6 word sentence that gives us an idea of the pattern of the signal that you identified through the interconnections among these articles. These are the instructions for now, and afterwards we will discuss what we will do in the next phase of this activity. So you have the instructions as well on your board.
So the rooms will be open in just a moment, but to find your board, you'll find that they're also named 1, 2, 3, 4. So go to the bottom left corner to click on frames, and then here you can find your corresponding number. It's the second one, so not 4 but 3. And whichever room you're in, that's the board that you will work on. The rooms will open now.
This is part of the case study that we will discuss afterwards. And when we initially spotted these signals in my team, we identified a signal arising out of these 2 articles, early access to new generation of digital humans and digital humans to serve the metaverse, as indicating towards a signal regarding the use of digital human workers as a source of labor supply in digital worlds. And when we read through the articles with the title "World Religions Adapt to COVID-19 through Virtual Practice" and the faceless Catholic robots designed to help people pray, put on display in a Polish church, we identified these 2 news articles, the headlines, as indicating towards a signal of technological innovation entering religious practices. The last one was actually part of another signal, the 5th article. It did not fit any of these 2 occasions. Now, the interesting thing is that your teams interpreted these articles in a different way. And I wanted you to see how others interpreted these articles. And let's see that we see here that some of you, for example, clustered these headlines in a different way. You brought together the robot, the digital people, and the digital humans, and also the other robot in the same category of, like, in a sense that technology is entering social life, decision-making ways of life in a more like accentuated way. And you left the adaptation to COVID-19 as a signal related to the pandemic. Others, for example, were very close to what I initially made sense of with my team. So you included the robot painting the building in Dubai in the cluster where we had the digital people, and you created a super signal, let's say, that included both the robots and the digital people. And you observed that perhaps this could be a signal regarding the use of emerging technologies to replace human workforce in general, not just in the virtual world, this is something that we expected to see, and I'm very proud that we can see the work that you did in just like 10 minutes, showcasing how making sense is part of a group effort that you do within your team, and of the interpretations that you give when you construct meaning out of the headlines of this, out of any data that you come across. So if you look through the board, you will see that there are many different signals recognized, constructed out of the headlines of these news articles that we all read through. Digital humans, robotization, and I think that this showcases, I think some people also left one of the articles outside. It was not clustered. It's interesting because I didn't tell you how many of these articles go in its category. So it's interesting to see this diversity of interpretations of the world, and this is exactly what we wanted you to take out of this first part of the exercise. Now we will go to the second part, where we will provide you with a catalog, let's say. It's not exactly a list of 9 signals that have already been identified and have been described. You have their titles, you have some short descriptions, and what we ask you to do is to try to read through these signals, the 9 signals that you can see. It's, yeah, sorry for the bugs, it's a little bit lagging for some reason. We ask you to read through the descriptions of the signals, and you can see the news sources from which they were constructed, and try to identify this time patterns among the signals themselves. Again, like we did in the previous case, try to find signals in these light blue boxes that might be clustered together because they are pointing towards the same direction. And when you do so, you have, again, in your boards, these sort of white areas where you can drag the titles of these, or just, on the side, because it's a bug here. But you can drag them on the side next to, cluster them together, bring the titles of the signals together in a way that makes sense for you, and provide a name for this cluster you have constructed in these light blue boxes that you have on the corners of your clusters. Again, some of these signals might not be part of a cluster, but we will see this afterwards, right? I can't tell you how many clusters are there. You will find this yourselves, and we will see when we are done. But feel free to discuss this in a more extensive way, let's say, within your group, because now we have 15 minutes to do so. So you read these, you read the signals. Again, in the same groups, you will discuss among your short groups, your small groups, to create the clusters. Write down the name of the cluster, and then we're done. Great. So now I think everyone is back now. We have been looking through what you have been working on the boards. I know it's a little bit stressful to do this work that you have been doing in such a short amount of time, but this is just a simulation, and you have already like understood what we wanted you to see for yourselves. It's amazing to see. You should be very proud of yourselves. You have, with just in under 2 hours, you have already started finding signals and clustering signals into emerging issues. And we have already seen what we discussed in the theory part, that there are many different interpretations of what kind of things, of phenomena, of broader phenomena might clusters of signals be signifying. So what I'm going to do first to start with my team's interpretation on this. Where's that? Yeah, my team's interpretation on these clusters of signals. So when, because this is part of the case study that we're going to discuss a little bit afterwards, again, I wanted to show you how you interpreted these signals that we provided you in a different way, and in a very interesting way, I might say. My team initially clustered the silver economy, anti-aging, and anti-natalism together as a cluster of signals that might be indicating the emerging issue, aging population as a growing market. And my team also grouped together the Great Resignation, job sharing, and polyworking as a cluster of signals that might be indicating work flexibility for well-being. And the interesting thing is that the other three signals were part of other emerging issues, actually. Each one of these was part of another emerging issue. So these were not made sense during our team's work in the same way that you used them to construct your own clusters of emerging issues. So it is interesting to see here that there are different interpretations, like there are unexpected clusters here, which are indicating how different perspectives might actually be making sense of the world in different ways. You see here that people have used all of these, while yeah, in the case of my team, this did not happen. We used these classes that I showed you. It's very interesting to see the diversity of interpretations that you have brought to the table. And I wanted to stress out here that one of the reasons why this happens, besides collective intelligence and intersubjectivity here, is because you don't have the framing. We had a specific framing when we were making sense of these signals, and I wanted to stress out the importance of framing in the way that you are perceiving both news articles as data points, let's say, to construct your signals, but also the signals themselves as clusters that might be indicating an emerging issue. The framing that you have when you are scanning the horizon may be affecting the way that you perceive the relevance and the interconnections among these signals. So I will discuss our framing in the case study, but you can have a look around. You will have the slides and also the link to the board to look around and see how without a framing, an explicit framing, you made sense of this in totally unexpected ways. And I'm very proud of the job that you have been doing, and I'm very sure that you're proud of yourselves as well. So the last part of this hands-on exercise is just me showing you this part that we discussed in theory. Then when we have created this cluster of signals that might be indicating an emerging issue of a broader phenomenon that is emerging into the present, that might be signaling something regarding the future, we said that in order to be able to make sense of this in an even more like comprehensive way, just you can classify them into trends, uncertainties, and weak signals to feed them into other strategic foresight activities like scenario planning, or perhaps even futures literacy related activities like a futures literacy lab or futures literacy workshop. So how do you do this? We said that you discuss with your team again to gain a certain understanding and a certain interpretation regarding the impact and the certainty of this specific emerging issue that you identified with respect to the scope, the temporal, and also the thematic or other area related scope of your work. So what you would then do is to get like a set of these axes and move these after the discussion with your group. you would move this, the sticky, we did this in exactly the same way. We moved the sticky notes after a discussion on specific parts of this axis, of this impact and certainty axis, because this is part of this meaning construction process. And the way that you interpret this, when you say that aging population for our case is like something of medium impact, but of high certainty with respect to our time horizon and also with respect to our area of interest. This means that using this color coding version of the axis, you can make sense of them. And now you can actually say that aging population is a growing market is not just an emerging issue in general, let's say that's a generic observation, but specifically it is a trend. For our case, in our temporal horizon and within our theme, it is a trend. And human resources shortage is an uncertainty, and work flexibility for well-being is a weak signal. And this is because of the color coding of this axis that is also provided to you in the theoretical part of the presentation. And this is part of the process that we have created within my group. So now we are done with the hands-on exercise. I'm going back to the presentation to be aware of time. Just to remind you of this process of scoping an action plan that sets the frame, searching for signals, evaluating and selecting signals, clustering, selecting signals, assessing the clusters, interpreting clusters to elicit emerging issues. We have done most of these parts up until this point. And then you have a list of clusters that are signifying emerging issues. So in our case, we had a specific scope, which was to detect emerging issues of interest that may be indicating how present events related to the innovation landscape in a specific country of interest might unfold in the future by 2035. In order to address this scope of our study, horizon scanning study, we conducted primary research, interviews with key innovation actors, because this was the theme, around 10 of them, a survey for the broader innovation community, around 150 of them, and a scanning workshop with diverse actors of the innovation community, around 20 of them, to simulate the discussions and the emergence of new ideas. And we also conducted secondary research, extensive search in the following sources that I'm presenting here, but you will find this in the presentation. You can use them as well in your own work. These are, it's part of the secondary research that we conducted, and these are openly available sources. So when you are conducting this sort of activity in the loop of search, evaluate, cluster, and assess, you're working both individually and as a team. You individually, in your team, you are looking for signals, and we suggest using some sort of just a simple online spreadsheet, or perhaps even something like a whiteboard like the one that you used before in our hands-on exercise. But for the other three steps of evaluating, clustering, and assessing, this is a collaborative work, and this is shared meaning construction. And in order to be able to make sense of these signals that you have identified on your own, each one of you, you need to work on a collaborative environment, on a virtual, let's say, environment like perhaps like the one that we used before, a virtual whiteboard tool that could enhance collective intelligence, so that you can alternate between collaborative and individual work. This is what we did, at least. And I'm presenting here three clusters that we identified in order to be able to elicit emerging issues through them. You may be already seeing some of the stuff that you did during the hands-on exercise before. You see that we have the aging population as a growing market with the anti-natalist movement, aging population, silver economy here. We also have the work flexibility for well-being cluster of signals here that includes job sharing, polyworking, the great resignation, the signals that you worked on yourselves before. These are just three of the emerging issues that we worked, and these are like just 5 of the signals that comprise these emerging issues. And of course, the more signals that you take into consideration, the more different your interpretation of the clusters would be. And this is also bound by the frame of the work that you are doing. The innovation landscape of a specific country by 2035 was our case. So then I'm also presenting here how the second order, let's say, sense making of this emerging issue happened. We moved these 10 emerging issues that we identified into the axis, and following this framework with the color coding of red, blue, and green, we identified 4 trends, 3 weak signals, and 3 uncertainties for our specific emerging issue scanning project, to be able to feed them into a strategic foresight exercise afterwards. So now, let me quickly go through the main resources that you would perhaps use when you would be conducting this sort of activities yourselves. So first of all, how to proceed with the scanning process. You can either set up an in-house team or outsource the process. There are advantages and disadvantages in either case, but my suggestion would be just build your own guild. You see how shared interpretation and can actually be part of the exercise. So if you want to prevent some sort of miscommunication with the outsourcing partner, and if you want to be able to drive the scanning with total control, and also to build capacity inside your organization for continuous scanning, you need to build your own guild, your own team that would be constantly scanning and building their skills. But again, this is your call. You can see here some more advantages and disadvantages on either case. But if you decide to build your own guild, you need to keep in mind the following: that when people think, they tend to use 2 different systems of thinking: fast thinking and slow thinking. Fast thinking is using intuition. It is quick, it is efficient, it is unconscious usually. It is based on past experience, on past mental models, something that you will be discussing in a Futures Leaders Masterclass perhaps in the future. And it also uses heuristics, and that is why it is plagued by a lot of cognitive biases. Slow thinking is using analytical reasoning. It is slow. It needs deliberate effort, use analytical techniques, mathematics perhaps, or other sort of scientific reasoning, empirical and quantitative methods, and humans use both. The thing is that when you are making sense of things, you might actually be using fast thinking. And you do this because heuristics, mental shortcuts, is part of the evolutionary trajectory of humans. Humans developed heuristics as strategies that ignores part of the information to make decisions more quickly, frugally, or accurately than more complex methods. And this is in order to be able to act fast in a world that requires a lot of effort. So in order to be able to reduce the effort, heuristics have been developed in the human mind, and this is not necessarily good or bad. This might even be necessary in worlds which are very uncertain, and analytical models might not be able to explain in a way that makes sense fast enough. So in order to be able to process less information, humans developed heuristics. And you can read more about heuristics here. There are at least 4 classes of heuristics related to recognition, related to trade-offs. Just like, give me one reason to make a decision. The way that people buy things at the grocery store might be an essential part of classes of heuristics. Just feel free to read through this presentation in more depth. The presence of heuristics in information seeking and retrieval that have been developed through the ages of human evolutionary pathways have given rise to cognitive biases, which are systematic patterns of deviation in thinking, which may lead to errors in judgment and decision making. And these biases affect the ways people perceive and process new information, which is why it is relevant when you are seeking information and you are trying to retrieve information. So you have to keep in mind that there are biases, almost 180 different biases that can have both positive and negative impacts. You have to keep in mind that everything you do might be influenced by such biases like too much information or not enough meaning, or the need to act fast, or the need to select what to remember, creating stories that could perhaps help your memory retain more information about the world. Now, I just wanted to please look carefully, follow the instructions. This is a very famous, let's say, way to depict one class of biases that are derived from heuristics that people use. This is the selective attention bias that arises when people focus on some specific parts of reality in order to be able to function, let's say, in a world that is full of information. So how many of you actually spotted the gorilla? Let us know in the chat. Now, just some guidelines if you want to be able to handle the world with your biases and heuristics. Try to develop your scout mindset. The scout mindset is this sort of reasoning that is like map making. It is not like the effort to see things as you wish they were, but you're trying to see things as they appear. You are trying to actively test your assumptions. You're trying to change course. You are revising your map of reality, and you're trying to build a map that is more accurate and not to fortify or defend your beliefs. A lot of people might be plagued by this effort to actively defend their beliefs. So a scout mindset might actually help you operate and function with all these biases and heuristics. And in order to be able to do so, you have to practice this mindset. And to practice this mindset, yes, the slide is black for some reason. It shouldn't be. But to practice this mindset, you can use a set of examples that I have here. Please feel free to go back to the presentation when we will send it to you. For some reason, it appears black in my screen. It has 5 examples of counterfactual tests that you can do. Try to portray yourself in the place of another person. Try to portray another person in your case. Try to make this sort of thought experiments that will help you develop your scout mindset. And also try to build your anticipation for emergence, which is part of another upcoming masterclass, because anticipation for emergence, which is using the future to see the present from new viewpoints, which can enhance your imagination and creativity, will help you both generate more diverse signal hypotheses when you are scanning, when you are trying to find novel things. This building your anticipation for emergence capacity, which we will discuss in other masterclass, will help you imagine better targets when you are looking for, and it will also help you recognize more preliminary signals that you encounter when you are scanning through a serendipitous discovery, a lucky discovery. So there are also some sources here that you can use in your work practically. There are prompts that you can use in interviews, in surveys, in workshops to generate signals, low or medium certainty signals, try to elicit medium or high certainty signals, or very low certainty signals. There are some props here on the left. There are secondary sources on the right. You have a list of openly available catalogs, let's say, of preliminary signals that you can go through to become better at scanning. And you also have the capacity to use, like you have the option to use text mining and AI, let's say, enabled tools to be able to scan large big data, let's say, large amounts of different varying kinds of data, like websites, blogs, literature, gray literature, published literature, Twitter, wikis. But this will only get you to the point where you will have aggregated data in a way that you will still need to make sense of it. So instead of like manually looking through all this stuff, you can use AI augmented tools to collect important, let's say, or like news that might be appearing a lot out there, or topics that might be appearing in the literature, and then you go manually with your team to make sense of this. So you can incorporate artificial intelligence in your processes, but please keep in mind that it is humans that are doing the scanning work. And this is the final slide here. Scanning for signals is actually a sense of mapping an unknown territory. The purpose is to help organizations sense and make sense of the future as it emerges in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, given multiple limitations in information seeking and retrieval. And the benefits of this process is that it mitigates the problems of humans' bounded rationality. It can enhance intelligence gathering activities, and it can help people practice their anticipatory abilities by thinking more about the future. But it cannot in itself provide strategic options without feeding into other strategic foresight activities like scenarios. It may give the wrong impression of access to objective knowledge of the future, which hopefully after the hands-on exercise is no more the case for you. You have seen how interpretation affects the way that we make sense of the future, and it relies a lot on human imagination. As I said, the human element, human imagination is the most important part of this activity of scanning, even if you use computational intelligence tools. So I'm very sorry for the rush. That's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention. If we have time for questions, I would be happy to take any. I truly tried my best.
Thank you, George. That was amazing. And while I think we should wait for some more minutes for people who really have questions, I would start to refer that you received a lot of kudos from our audience so far. Sometimes private messaging, sometimes openly in the chat. So this is for you, because you made an incredibly great work. So let's leave it some minutes. In the meantime, I really enjoyed. I hope you come back in the next session, because I guess we need some more information on how to map the La Terra Incognita that we face in our daily life. So I mean, I appreciated the focus on impact. I appreciated the two systems of thinking. I guess we should have more time to really think that through also. It is not rational, but it makes sense is another good one that I take away from today's class. So other people just sharing very positive feedback. I would like to ask you all, maybe also in a second moment, but if possible, for those ones who run on an earlier time zone, maybe to help us with a brief evaluation questionnaire. My colleagues will put the link. It is not very long. We really believe at UNESCO this is the added value of measuring a little bit more about the impact that we can provide. We really enjoyed this really short but intense tour through the fascinating world of horizon scanning. It was a collective learning experience in my view. I have the opportunity to hear from my colleagues that the group works went extremely well and you were very active. And yes, definitely we will share the presentation, the recording of the theoretical part. And George, I hope you will be again on our availability once, on our disposal. let me thank you all for your participation today. I would like to briefly give the floor to Iriana, my colleague who is working on these masterclasses. She might also give you a very brief overview of what is coming up next, as we will go on next time into the topic of scenarios. Iriana, you organized, I guess, a wonderful course. You know, this is a product of many meetings, of many co-design sessions with George. So it is your time, it is Iriana's work also, and the team is a team effort, obviously. Iriana, would you immediately just take the floor and brief us about what is coming up?
Yes, thank you so much, Christine. Thank you, George. Excuse me. On December 5th, we have the second session, the second masterclass. It's going to be on scenarios. It is co-led by ILO and UNESCO, with having as an invited expert Wendy Schultz. This session will be slightly longer, 2 hours and 30 minutes. So hope we will see you there, and we will see how actually we can use products from horizon scanning in creating scenarios and getting intelligence to develop strategies. So thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Please do us the favor and answer to the survey. It is very important for us. This has been thought as a pilot action, so we are very happy with the number of participants and the group works. If you liked it, please also maybe internally talk about it with your colleagues. We really believe there is added value to upgrade somehow, or upskill, or give the possibility to learn more about these incredibly important things, to make sure in the future we work against those biases, make sure we can see the gorillas next time, and make a step forward, especially when looking at our common agenda and all the issues we have currently. And yeah, again, thank you for your time, and have a good weekend, and keep exploring futures with us. I take the last 20 seconds to invite you to World Futures Day, which UNESCO is preparing for next Friday. For all of you who don't know about it, I ask my colleagues to maybe share the link to the registration. Here it is. It is a condensed program, 4 hours plus a cocktail. For those of you who are in Paris or near to Paris, we would be very happy to meet you and greet you. George, you are absolutely our guest after such a nice course. So I know it's not easy to move before the holiday season, but you are all welcome also to join us online. Again, it will be a very nice session where we try to put the ecosystem, the UN ecosystem, under the spotlight, and what is done, what all your organizations are doing to make sure futures and foresight can be more present in the mindset of our leaders, because it actually leads to enlightened leadership in our view here at UNESCO. It is all about capabilities, competencies. So you are all welcome to join us here, and we thank you. And I close the meeting. Bye-bye. Thank you.